We're going to have to hurry here. I know how hard it is to sit through my movies. So we'll answer these questions. And I was only going 55. That's how bright it is up here. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Kevin, when I introduced the first part of the film, I told the audience that you're reaching beyond the myth of Western films with this saga. And I told them that we're used to seeing the small towns in the middle of the West already built. And we've never seen the journey that got us through this towns being built and the tragedy that took place in the building of this towns. Can you tell us about you wanting to go against the Western myth?
All I wanted to just remind us is when we look down into those plains and we see those towns, that this land, when we migrated west, we came with this dream. We did, all our children in Europe were going to be second and third class citizens. There was no place for them in monarchies, but we were told if we could get across that Atlantic Ocean, there was a place. It was like the Garden of Eden. And if you were mean enough and tough enough, you could make it yours. And that dream that brought people across the Atlantic was the nightmare for the people who had been here for 15,000 years. And this land was contested all the way across America. And it was a bad ending for the Native Americans who existed here, who had found some equilibrium. But I'm not embarrassed about that. I'm just disturbed that we don't know more about it. And I was always bothered that we didn't have more women in our Westerns, because there was no Western without women.
When I would watch your film, I was also struck about the role of commerce in in the West and the violence that commerce, selling this dream of the lands, etc., which I don't recall seeing this. And
There's salesmen in every century. There's liars in every century. There's heroism and there's cowardice in every century. We shouldn't be surprised that we're not too different than these people. When you see Sienna Miller, the incredible Sienna Miller, look and finally realize that she had a home. It's even though it's in the dirt, someone built this woman a home. And America was in inches. There was a struggle. It was not a land in Disneyland. It was a struggle, and there was beauty and there was heroism, and just the sheer act of raising your children was heroic.
Tell us a little bit also about the way you portray the Native Americans in this film with, the specificity, White Mountain Apache, and they speak that dialect, the clothing also, that Lisa, you were involved in, the fact that we don't see buckskins, we actually see ponchos and a different look that we've never seen in Native Americans portrayed in film. Both Kevin and Lisa, yes.
We did a lot of research. I did, and we shared together. Kevin is very knowledgeable about the West. And I think it was very important to stay true to what the White Mountain Apaches, what we see in the research and what we read in books and see in paintings, what they wore. And it was influenced by the Spanish. And we did a lot of the cottons. And I think what was really nice, just filmatically, that the Apaches were in this cream color against the red rock. And I think it looked really beautiful on film, and it was accurate for those Apaches.
Why have you, I've been dying to ask you, Lisa, about the scarf that Kevin wears in this movie is so distinctive. It shows strength, and there's a little bit of mystery in this big scarf that he wears. How did that come about?
That's exactly what we wanted the audience to feel. We wanted to have a moment where you see that this character of Hayes, there's something more to him than what you just first see on screen. And maybe that scarf can give you a little hint of who we will see in 2 and 3. And I think that was just a little subtle beauty that we were trying to show for Hayes.
You know, there's not a lot of research you can do because it's the thing that exists are black and whites of that time. And I said to Lisa, you know, I point at Remington's, I point at Russell's, the paintings, and as a level of our research, and and I there's a rawness there. And just to point out what it is, Remington, our great Remington painter, he finally decided that he would take his work to New York City and it would stand. And at that point, all the European masters who had been brutalized by the critics, their art was suddenly quite the thing in New York. And when the American critics looked at the European art, they just adored it. And when they saw Remington's horses skinny, sweating, the level of detail, limp ropes, mustaches, they rejected him. It was terrible for Remington. In fact, he went home, he was so distraught, and he destroyed 20 of his molds. He was looking at it really authentically, and that's why I allowed Lisa to look at that work and to look at Charlie Russell. And it just happens in every century when people's work is just dismissed. And I always felt bad for Remington, but thank God he painted and he sculpted what he saw, and that's what we tried to do.
Thank you. John, the great John Debney, composer. What a phenomenal score. And I noticed there may be more themes, but I noticed 3 themes ongoing. There's the main theme, then you have a theme for the Native Americans, which is very noble, and then you have Sienna Miller also has a very particular.
Yes.
Yeah, can you tell us about creating?
Sure. The first thing I have to say is I told Lisa this earlier tonight. You know, I think that Horizon 1 and 2 are truly the first films that I've done where I didn't realize it till midway through the process working with Kevin that I was being inspired by not only the incredible scenery and what Kevin put on the screen, not only the incredible acting of all, and many of you are here tonight. I'm humbled by your talents, but I realized that the costumes were speaking to me. And that doesn't happen often. And I think it was the care that Kevin and you, Lisa, took. To answer your question, there are probably 3 or 4 themes. The women in this movie, in number 2, they just blow me away. Can we have a hand for... And so I would say, you know, one of the things that Kevin and I spoke about early was the idea of having a beautiful voice, you know, the inner voice of these incredible women that just take over the screen. So I utilized the voice. There is a Hayes theme, an Ellis and Hayes theme that I quite enjoy whenever Kevin comes on the screen. If it's appropriate, I'd like to play that. And then there's an overall noble theme. I would call it a noble theme that I hope exemplifies all sides. Our Native Americans, the settlers, you know, the incredible story of all these people, this cacophony of life that they, you know, brutally, steadfastly pushed on to try to create this town and this world. So at the end of both 1 and 2, I get to state that big theme. It's, I don't know, I'm like a kid. I'm like a 8-year-old kid who goes into the theater and is blown away by what he sees and hears. So I can't thank Kevin enough, but those are the main themes in the movie.
John, yes. I love, as a young kid, going to the movies to see how the West was won. And I was just wondering, I could hear a little bit of Alfred Newman. Is that, am I correct?
Yes, I just got a chill. He was one of my heroes, and that score for how the West was won was a seminal score for me. And I think Kevin might tell you it's a seminal score for him too. And I remember seeing it in the Cinerama Dome when I was 7 or 8, whenever it came out. And I just remember just being so incredibly touched by the music and the whole thing, but especially the music. So yes, maybe it's my little love letter to all of those guys and those ladies and women that created those great westerns.
Um, Tagging on Kevin, to what John just said, you forge your own path with this film, but I see that there are tributes to John Ford in it. You've done several Lawrence Kasdan movies in it, and there is a little bit of tribute to, can you tell us about as I said, you forge your own path, but we see influences or tributes along the way.
There was a few nods, one to John Ford, one to Lawrence Kasdan, who helped me in my career, and another single line that was Jim Harrison, who wrote, some incredible short stories. And I don't know, I just like dragging people forward with me. I was moved by some of those movies, and there was some part of the movies that was corny for me. I wanted to just move away from the corny and get to um, I've told people before, it's just not a land in Disneyland, our frontier. It was contested, it was fought for, and it was beautiful. I find so much drama in the American West, and so I don't mind saying that at all. The Irishman. I mean, we all almost have a tear when Michael Rooker, who did an amazing job as that sergeant,
Yeah.
when he said, "Yeah." So, we I'm happy to if it's called cheating, you can call that. I just put a nod to John Ford because I so appreciated him.
Hmm. Um, the subject of Sienna Miller's and the women in this movie is they're so essential to the narrative. And I'd love for you to talk to us about. We've never seen women in a Western portrayed the way you portray them. This reluctant women that had no choice, that were, put into this position. You know,
Right. Yeah, for us to think that a woman couldn't be co-opted right in front of a group of people, I think we're kidding ourselves. Oh, that would never happen. It's happening now, all around us, across the world. It happens, and comes a point though. If there's enough good men, if there's enough good women, they'll reach a critical point, and we will say exactly what Will Patton said. You know what? You two are wearing us out. We're about done. But it happens, and every century and every decade. And so our movie is better. When we started writing, we didn't know John Barrett, a sensational writer and sensational. When we were creating this story, we could not keep women out of it, and they just kept running down the themes of all our storylines. It just was easier with them in it.
um,
We'll get to the gunfight.
which actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because we're used to seeing so many westerns where so many gunfights, etc. But you create a different type of language in your film. Like you stress the humanity in the situation. For example, like one of the things I'll never forget is the gentleman hanging on to the violin. There are moments like that. The woman burying her son and the blanket. The human touches in your film. Can you talk about emphasizing those moments?
I think I'm obligated to try to find those things, because if we're not, we're just bashing along. It's the little things in our life that catch us, that we never forget. We're bound to get those big things, but movies are the same way. They're about details that somehow you never, ever forget. And you try to build them in. If you're lucky, there's people, catch them. And the only way to catch them is to try to lodge it in behavior. I mean, I'm not talking about science, but just stick with behavior. It's pretty damn entertaining.
Lisa, tell us about distressing all of this clothes. Like I was noticing the progression in the wagon trails of their clothing. That must have been quite a task for you.
We did try to make a point that anytime the wagon train was by water, we would put the efforts into clotheslines and showing that they just had only one or two options. So they would try to wash and try to clean and try to respect what they were wearing, because it wasn't like today. They have just a couple things, so they would keep it nice and try to keep it clean. So in the wagon train and trying to keep the travels, which would be about 4 or 5 months, I wanted to try to show the kind of the progression of from somewhat clean to going down dirty, being by a lake or a river, cleaning their clothes, moving on, and that the audience could see that these people were limited in their resources, limited in food, limited in water. And I think that having the characters in the same clothes all the time, kind of, you really notice the passage of, you don't notice the day to day, but you notice that the struggles were so much beyond fashion and clothing. They were just trying to live.
Tell us about Hugh and Juliet's clothing, that it was so distinctive that they're they're completely different from the rest of the characters.
And we tried to do that. We wanted to do them very specific. They were English. We tried to put a little influence of European, taste into Juliet's outfit and into Hugh's styling. We wanted to do something that was beautiful and set apart from the rest of the wagon train, but tones and colors and print that when you see her all together, she blended, but she was very specific. I don't know if they understood what the 5 months on a wagon train would be. And I think that that's the script and how beautifully written, that their struggle for her taking a bath and retaining some sense of dignity in cleanliness. And I think that was so beautifully written. So we tried to work out her costume to fit in with the script that we were all given. And I think that you could see that her beauty, on Horizon 2 still remained, but the situation she was put in and how we brought down the clothes and tried to dress her in just taking the same tone but bringing it into a solid color so that you would kind of feel like a little bit of her energy is being pulled away.
Thank you, John. I was fascinated with the way that your score and the sound design work in this film. Tell us about achieving the balance.
I'm so pleased. I don't know if any of our sound guys are here, Kevin, and ladies, but I thank you for saying that. We really worked very, very hard to try to get the right blend. And I notice every time I see them, one or two, both movies, I notice more things. And tonight, I really noticed during the wagon train, the fire, Kevin, there's music throughout, yet the effects play on top. And it's just such a beautiful marriage. So I would say that it's always a marriage between sound and music. And I think, guided by Kevin, both films exhibit real artistry in sound. And I couldn't be more proud of it. I think, there's always the yin and yang, the give and take. And it's it's through working with really wonderful professionals. I hope some of you are out here. That that balance can occur, and I couldn't be more proud of it. Number two, I don't know. There's something even more intimate about number two, Kevin, and we've sort of talked about this before. There's such an inward beauty to number two, from our characters, from where we sort of the growth of each character, and so I think number two was a really sophisticated blend, and I give my kudos to the sound people that they let me sort of write whatever it was that would please Kevin, and yet Kevin ultimately would make that decision, you know, when sound could take over, when music could take over. And I thought it was a really beautiful blend. So I thank my sound people and Kevin for that.
Thank you. Kevin, I know we got to start wrapping this up. Why create this American Saga? This has been a passion project of yours, deeply personal. You've put in your money on it. Why the urgency for you to tell this story?
The urgency?
Yeah.
Look at me. I started this in 1988. And I couldn't make it then, and I didn't seem like anybody liked it too much, so I thought, fuck it, I'm going to write 4 more. So, I don't know what my place has ever been in Hollywood. I love Hollywood. I do. I'm a romantic about what we can be and what we are. I would also like to just say to you as we end the night, thank you for honoring film and filling this theater. I want to thank those that sat through 2 of them. I want to thank Roger, who said he would help me 2 years ago. And he brought film from around the world here. I just want to know, this is my home. This is where I make my home. And you made me feel like a giant tonight. Thank you.
Well, you are a giant. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.